Okay, welcome everybody. I am Celeste and I am a librarian at River Valley District Library. And today we are joined by Dawn, and she is going to teach us the ins and outs of being a hobby farmer. Dawn, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, I'm Don Crist. I live up in Iowa, and I live on about 5 acres. So we're going to do sheep to sweater. So I'm going to hopefully run this little program. We'll see how well it works. I'm not super techy. So Celeste and I practiced yesterday, and we'll see how well it works. I own a sheep farm. And so my first thing is, how did we get here? So that sweater there is the sweater that I made. Actually, I have it here. And it's my barn sweater. I made it so I could go out and work the sheep, and it's made from one of my sheep out here. It all started because I wanted to be a knitter, and I was pregnant with my first baby. And then I started knitting. And then a few years later, I'm like, oh, hey, I want to spin. And my husband was deployed at the time. So I started spinning. And a few years later, I was like, well, I want to process the wool. Kind of like if you give a moose a muffin, it just keeps building and you have all these other things. Well, a few years after that, we decided to sell our house and buy an acreage. So we have about little less than 5.5 acres. And luckily, when we bought it, it was already fenced, fully fenced, which is kind of unheard of in farmland. So we bought that. And then right away, I started looking for sheep. So on the 17th of April, we went to buy 5 sheep that were being sold by a woman. And I bought a Shetland sheep. So Shetland sheep are a little bit smaller. Sheep can get up to about 400 pounds. These are around 90 to 100 pounds. And I went to buy 5 sheep, and she's like, well, hey, how about you just take all of them? So I came home with 11 sheep for the price of 5. And when I came home with those sheep a few days later, one of the ewes had 3 babies. And the next morning, another one had another baby. So my 11 sheep became 15. And then the next year, I added a few more, and then I sold a few. Came and went. So sheep math is a lot like chicken math, where you want 5 of something and you end up with 20. So now I have 20. 19 are mine. 1 sheep is on a sheep share. So she's actually owned by another friend of mine, and she comes and helps me do sheep work, and she gets the fleece from one of the sheep. So it's kind of a nice, fun way to have sheep if you can't have sheep where you live. So I have what's called a hobby farm. Hobby farms so this is my queen sheep. Her name is Anna, and that's her baby Bali. Bali was born when I was in Bali. So that's how she got the name. It's not done for profit. You're not going to make any money off of a sheep farm for the most part, unless you're doing it on a large scale commercial for meat. It's small scale. As a lot type sheep live their natural organic life. They get to eat all the grass that they want. They get a little bit of grain shaken at them when I need to get their attention. I want them to come to me. Though mine are trained now enough to come when I scream sheep. They will come running because they associate me with food now. It's really done just for the enjoyment in your own life. It's a hobby. So it's done because I can look out my window and see my sheep and enjoy their frolicking in the yard. It's also something that's done for sustainability. I have the ability to share my sheep, and if I had different breeds of sheep, I could eat them, or I could get their milk and milk them and make soap, drink milk, whatever. Sorry, my dog is in the room and he's now belching. It's a passion project. Sheep farming is generally not done because you think you're going to get rich off of it. You do it because you really enjoy the sheep. People make it, sorry, that's my dog. He's old. Sheep, people make comments about sheep being dumb. They're, sheeple, all this. Sheep are actually very intelligent. They know who they are. You can call them by name, and that one sheep will come to you. They know who their family members are. We had one sheep, one of the first sheep in the triplet of sheep that we had here was a really tiny little 3-pound ewe. That a ewe is a female sheep that was born blind, and we have a creek running through the property, and there's no way to keep her out of it. So we actually rehomed her, and she came back. She was rehomed to a family that had a vet in the family. Great opportunity for her. Well, the children eventually grew up. The parents became empty nesters. And that particular ewe was an older sheep now. She went to a friend of mine down the street, unbeknownst to her that it was a sheep born here. So she asked me to check her over. Hey, can you check her? And I looked, I'm like, I think this sheep was born here. So I said her name and she like immediately perked up. And then my friend took her home and realized that she was just pretty miserable. She was a pretty miserable lady there where she was. So she's like, hey, do you mind bringing her, if I bring her back to you? I'm like, that's fine, bring her back. She could see at this point, that had done some surgery and she could see. So she was safe to be on the farm. And I took her to the back, and her mom had rejected her because she couldn't find the milk. But the minute that sheep went into the back, all the other sheep came up looking for her. Her mom picked her out, went and grabbed the other siblings that were born at the same time, brought them over. And since sheep are very matriarchal, that particular mom was high on the track of things. So this ex-blind sheep now is up in the top of the food train. So she gets to eat first. She gets to do all the things that go along with the status of being one of the top sheep in the flock. So the babies of the top sheep get top billing. The second one, their babies get second billing. So sheep work, they have a very, very neat interaction. And it is joyful. It's joyful to watch them and to see how they change over the time. Yeah, they're just pretty fun. Sheep are a multi-purpose animal, so you can use them for meat, for milk, or for fleece. The dual purpose sheep are the meat and milk sheep. I do not have that kind because I don't want to eat sheep, and I don't want the responsibility of milking sheep. I don't want the responsibility of lambing. My real life job is to catch human babies. I don't want to catch sheep babies. It's exhausting. They can't talk to me. They can't tell me what's going on. And then I just end up having to be out in the barn every hour during lambing, and that's not fun. My sheep are Shetlands, so they're a heritage breed sheep. They're small. This particular sheep, his name was Rocky. He was an intact ram, and after he fathered several babies, he went to a friend of mine's house in Wisconsin with one of the other ladies that he didn't have any babies with. That way we didn't have inbreeding. He is beautiful. He's a lovely black sheep. This little one over here, that's the blind sheep. That's here at the bottom. Let me see if I can pull her picture of this here. There she is. That's Helen. Helen Keller. She was born blind, so she lived here until she found her home about 8 weeks after birth, and then she came back, and now she lives here again. This sheep is actually a niece or nephew of this one. So the little girl is my daughter Esme. She is holding Phineas, who is the nephew of this little girl and the grandson of this guy. So they're all related. Sheep for fleece. There's tons and tons and tons of breed of sheep. Different breeds have different purposes. They live best in different areas. The breed that I chose is a heritage breed. So it's here on this heritage list. It's a rare breed or a minor breed. They're not popular for production in agriculture. They don't make 15-pound fleeces. They don't make 85 pounds of meat. They don't make gallons of milk a day. So they don't, large agriculture is not going to use a Shetland sheep. They're perfect for homesteaders or hobby farmers. They're small. You can lift them pretty easily. My daughter, my 14-year-old, can lift one of my sheep and carry it somewhere, so we need to move it. They're low output. They perform well on pasture with little work from me. They're strong. They have easy time mothering. They lamb well. They're well suited for all the environments that we're in. Hi, my husband just got home. They are really easy to shear. So Shetlands will do something called ruing. So sometimes you don't even need to shear them. So that's that if necessary at all. There are several breeds of sheep that are heritage, and you can find those under that American Livestock Breeds Conservancy. And there are lots of programs to use if you want to watch that kind of sheep and spin from that kind of sheep. The more we spin from those sheep, the more we use those sheep, the more that they will go off of that conservancy list, the more prolific they'll become, and they'll come back from the brink of almost extinction. Shetland sheep are designed to be out in a mountain in the Shetland Islands and not really need a lot. They come in twice a year on Shetland Islands. They come in twice a year, once for care of their hooves or any vaccines, ear tagging, that kind of thing, and once to be short. So once for their haircut a year. Over here, this here is a girl named Coco. She came to me in one of that bought 5 sheep. This was her fleece when we rued her. This is when I processed it on what's called a drum carder, which we'll get to. And then this is what her fleece looked like. I ended up knitting her fleece and making those socks out of it, which was pretty fun. She's called a Morit color. It's Moorit. It's a variety of color and shape, and we're going to see those next. So in these, I'm going to move it here since I think pictures are going to be covering it. So the Shetland sheep colors are anywhere from this black to the Shayla, Emskit, gray. Black is the color that one male sheep that we showed earlier named Rocky. Most of my sheep are in this Morit Miojit Fawn area. I have a couple dark brown, a couple black. I have a couple light gray. One mama has given me 2 light gray babies. They're all dyeable. These aren't going to take as much dye. These ladies will take a lot more dye. These colors are actually very rich in color. They're beautiful. And I don't dye most of my fiber because, one, most of it's brown, in the brown range, but also I like the natural colors. Shetlands are the ewes. The ladies are between 75 and 100 pounds, and the rams, an intact ram will be between 90 and 125 pounds. Once you weather them, their weight's going to go cap out about 115. And weathering a sheep is just removing his balls. So the rams have spiraled horns, and the ewes are hornless. So there's something called polled. Sheep are docile, they're intelligent, they're very social. The fleece that we have from these ladies is really strong and it's very fine. So there's 2 kinds of Shetland sheep. I have what's called the 1927 traditional. And so their fleece is really tiny. Like, it's hard to see it here, but that's about 50 pieces of fiber there, like 50 hairs. So it's a really tiny hair fiber, and it makes a very, very strong yarn or a strong thread. The Shetland are considered recovering because people are, a lot of more hobby farmers are using Shetland, so they're in the recovering part of the conservancy list. And they're popular, Shetlands are popular among hand spinners because it spins very easily. It has a nice, they call it a nice hand. So when you work it, it's not rough. It's very soft. It's soft against the skin. So we call it skin soft. You can actually wear it. It's not something that you have to have is for using outer coatings. So you don't need it for outer parts of gloves or outer coats. You can actually wear it as a sweater and it stays soft on your skin. Okay, next here. So this is my barn cat. She helps keep my ladies safe from mice. This here is the process. This here is the process of me spinning for my sweater and my socks. That's more of my socks. So this is a 4-step process when you spin, and we'll go through the steps. But you have to spin it, you have to apply it, you have to cake it up, and then you spin it. So this is what it looks like. I think I'm talking to my children in this video, but we'll play it for a second. So this is just what it looks like if you're from my view of spinning. And it's relaxing. Pretty much what it looks like. Some people find it mesmerizing. We have to start with care of sheep when we do any type of hobby farming. A lot of people get into it and they have really no idea what they're getting into. Sheep are pretty easy to get into because there's not a lot to do with most sheep. They're bred to live independently. They don't need anything other than grass in season, so grass in the summer, spring, summer, and fall, and hay in winter. And what we actually use is hay that is, there's a local farmer and he gives us, we buy hay from him from one of our neighbors' fields. We have 2 neighbors that bale up their hay, and so we buy it from him. So he actually just leaves it on their property until it's time to bring it over to me. They don't need grain. One of the adages from sheep farmers years and years ago is grain makes hoof. So if you don't want to cut hoof, you don't want to give them a lot of grain. And I really don't like clipping their hooves because they bleed fairly easily and it's kind of dirty. So I don't want to do that if I don't have to. Shetland are able to live independently. They don't need much from us. The shearer that we have come here said that every time she comes, she's like, what do you feed these guys? Because that's the most fleece I've ever taken off of sheep. And I'm like, they just get the grass in the backyard. I don't give them anything else. We don't supplement them with a lot. I give them a little bit of mineral in case there's something missing out of the soil. We check their poo twice a year. I take a sample of poop to the vet and he tells me if they have worms or not. And if they have worms, then we treat them. If they don't have worms, then they're just left to go. They do have, so for part of their care, they do have a barn that they can go in. But for the Shetland, the only time I really see them in the barn is during like those polar vortexes. It can be snowing buckets and they're just going to lay outside in the snow. It's where they like it. They prefer to lamb without attention. They will hide to lamb instead of lambing where we're at. It's really hard to get them to lamb. I've actually did catch one lambing on video, but that's rare. They're really agile. They can jump up to different things. They'll jump up on things. They actually will jump up on my hay bales if they can. We'd like them not to because then they poop on them, but they can. And their hoof will wear down just by climbing on rocks. And we have a creek in the back, so they will climb on the rocks of the creek and that wears their hooves down. So I don't have to do a whole lot for them that way. I just get to enjoy them. So how we collect their fiber, we can do it a couple of different ways. Ruing is one way. Ruing is something that doesn't happen for most sheep. It happens more in heritage sheeps because they were left alone. Shetland sheep were kind of put on a mountain and just left there for several decades. And they developed a form of getting rid of their fleece without having human interaction. So this is Margarita, which is actually my friend Michelle's sheep, this is the sheep shear. So Margarita, before her shearing, her ruing, and after. So this is what she looked like, and then this is what she looked like. And so she was able to let me rue her on camera because it only required one hand. So this is just a little snippet of what we did. And it looks like I'm just kind of petting her. I'm just taking the fiber off of her really carefully, just with 2 fingers. So I'm just going like this. It doesn't require much. And she slept through part of it. And so she let me, she was like, I'm just gonna sleep through this. And then she woke up a little bit, but she's laying on it. I'm not holding her down. She's just on my lap like a toddler. So that's what it looks like. So this is the collection on a Shetland sheep, yearling sheep that's ruing. Hey, baby, you want to see what you're looking like? This is Margarita. She's enjoying this. Oh, she just sat there for it. She did not have a care in the world. We're sitting on the hay and she was like, okay, come on, give me a little rub down. So that's what we can do for some of my sheep. I generally don't because I don't have the time to when I have the option of a shearer coming in, and they take 3 minutes per sheep. The other way that you can collect sheep, there's 4 ways. The hair sheep, they rub off their hair. These are generally going to be your meat sheep that are going to be harvested for mutton and lamb. The heritage sheeps that will rue, they have all evolved with what's called a wool break. So what a wool break is it's just a weak spot in the wool, and that's how it just pulls right off. If you ever have to pull dog hair out of their ear, it's the same kind of process. Hand shearing looks like scissors. It's kind of like, it's just like getting a haircut at the salon, or machine shearing. Most people, when they think of shearing a sheep, think of the sheep being kind of like tossed around and machine sheared. It's a really loud buzzing clippers. A good shearer is worth their weight, and you treat them well and they will come back over and over and over. They love the animals just like that you love your own. So we do that. So what hand clipping looks like, and this is me hand clipping one of I think that is Peanut. So she was one of my little ladies born here. So Peanut is done with like a large scissors. So I don't know how well you can see this. It's not going to turn. So we'll just go ahead on these. So these are like big, huge scissors that we cut with. And I just tied her I did like a stanchion tie to the barn. And I just walked around her as she moved. And that way she just stood up for me because she was a little bit bigger, and having her on my lap would have been a pain in the butt. And those scissors are very, very sharp. The reason I actually have a glove on is because the lanolin in their fleece, the oil in their fleece gets really sticky and it makes it hard to grab things. So the lanolin will kind of get wet on my bare hand. And then, if the lanolin's on your hand, it's getting kind of greasy and it makes it kind of slick. With a glove, it doesn't have the same heat and response to my skin. So it was a lot easier to not lose track of my scissors. So that's what that looked like. And it was a very hot day. It takes about 45 minutes. And I used to just play music when I had to do that. This is what she looked like afterwards. And before, let me move the right lady here. Trying to find the picture. She, ooh. I'm gonna bring this picture over because I think my stuff is being hidden. That's what she looked like beforehand. So she went from this top picture to the bottom picture in the course of about 45 minutes, one day in April. And she just stood there. We put some music on and I jam out and she hangs out and then she gets some snacks. The other way that we shear is through machine shearing. It's done very quickly. Shears require a training or an apprenticeship, and then the longer they do it, the better they get. This particular woman that shears is from a place called Right Choice Shearing, and she's out of Texas. So she and her partner come and they do a tour all around the US. They do basically Texas up. They have some family here in Iowa, so they come up through Illinois and then they come into Iowa and then they go around. They do something in Colorado, Arkansas. They just kind of do a big loop out of Texas and they start in January. So this year they were in Iowa in January, so they sheared. And this was the last lady that they sheared. And you can kind of see at one point in the video where she's shearing Sharon and she gets a little agitated. So she just talks to her, calms her down, and then moves right on. So the sheep is just kind of hanging out there looking at her like, what are you doing? So that's the belly wool that we just don't use. I use it in my garden beds. But how she's holding her looks aggressive if you don't know what you're seeing. But the sheep is just hanging out. She's like, what are you doing? She's sniffing her hands, she's looking at her. The sheep is not stressed in any way when this happens. And if you don't shear them, they actually will get really sick and they can die. They need this haircut. They're evolved to require it as part of their everyday daily maintenance. Shetlands are a type of sheep that we don't have to cut their tails, so we leave their tails long. I don't back their tails. I don't think that's necessary. And so she was actually, she got a little excited there. So just gives her a little hug, hold her for a second, and then moves on. And this is two young ladies that do this shearing for us, and they're amazing. So the positions that she's putting the sheep in are, it's called the Australian method of shearing, and they're positions to give the least amount of stress to the animal. She pushes on certain points to keep their skin straight so they don't get cut, so they don't have any injuries after they are shorn. And this is my daughter just walked past the screen and she was getting ready to be done, so she's getting ready to grab her to move her back out to the pasture. And the sheep just kind of hangs out like, hey, here we go. Then this is the shearer's partner, Katie. It's coming, and she's gonna love on the sheep a little bit. And they do this for every sheep. They just kind of come in and give them a little pet. And that's what shearing looks like when it's done by a machine. It's pretty uneventful. The way we process it, we do several steps to process sheep to get them ready to be spun. We skirt them, so we take off any poop parts, any tags that have like poop or dirt on them. We soak it to get the loose dirt off. We divide it out based on what fiber we want to use, and then we wash it or we scour it. And then you can either pick it, hand card it, or drum card it, or comb it, or you can flick and spin. So in this picture, this is my daughter when she was about 6 or 7, and she was hand carding. And traditionally, children would be doing this job. It's really easy. The other way we can do things is it's called combing. We're going to fast forward through this a little bit if we can. I don't know if I can. I tried to do this in fast forward motion, but it wouldn't let me. So we'll just talk over it. So in this process, we're doing something called combing, and these are very sharp. You know, if you can kind of see that little tip there, it's like a sharpened nail. And what we're doing, what I do here is I'm just straightening the fibers, getting all the dirt out. Is essentially what I'm doing. It's just getting all the little pieces of vegetable matter that they get in their fleece for the course of a year. Pieces of hay, pieces of dirt, maybe some, oh, I don't know, grass, maybe a sticker from a sticker bush that's in there. And every once in a while you do stab yourself with these and it hurts, but it makes really nice fiber, so you put up with it. And you get good at doing this over time. It's my favorite way to process fiber. So that's how fine that fiber is. It's just really tiny. I'll do this when I'm watching TV or if I'm just kind of hanging out. I have some time if I'm out with friends, if I'm at a campfire or camping, I'll take some of this with me, and while we're sitting and talking, we can just work this in the course of conversation, and it doesn't really take a lot of attention. So that's stuff I just throw away, or I actually put it in my garden as bedding. So this is going to make something called a nest, and that's what I spin out of, is a nest. And what's stuck in the end of that comb there is little bits of trash, little bits of hay or little bits of poop. Maybe some seeds from the hay or seeds from the grass. So that's all it is. All right. The other way you can do something is called drum carding. Drum carding makes a bat, so it makes like a big flat piece. And we use that to spin something. If you want to make something really lofty and warm, like a hat. It does not wear as long as what I just used, which would make a worsted yarn. Drum carding makes a very fluffy fiber. So this is actually fast forwarded. So this thing, you just put fiber in really thin, and it takes a long time. Like this probably took about 20 minutes. And I think it's put down to, I think 30 or 40 seconds. And what I'm doing there is just picking out little bits of dirt. That's all it is. So you can do a lot more quickly with this. That I think is like 2 ounces of fiber. And so people are like, well, how much does it make? 2 ounces of fiber will make a sock if it's spun properly. The next part is just spinning it. So I have several different ways that you can spin. You can, after you shear, you skirt, you scour, you prep, you can spin. So you can do something called drop spindling, which looks like this. And it's like this little, very primitive tool, works really well. It works nice. I did it on a plane. I've done it camping. I've done it, here at the house, just kind of whatever I want to just do something slow and for the process of it. The other way you can spin is this is a traditional wheel. This wheel is actually, we found it at a sale, spinning days, and I think we estimated it's about 1880 that it was made. So it's 140 or so years old. I refinished it, stripped it of everything, and it works beautifully. So that's what spinning on a spinning wheel would look like. This kind of spinning, you can kind of get into a trance with. It makes a certain amount of noise, and you can just go and go and go. The other way of spinning is through e-spinners, electric spinners, and some people that have mobility issues would use something like this, or if they have, if you've got some neuropathy in your feet, you can't feel your feet very well, or you only have one foot, or you're in a wheelchair, you can still spin using this kind of spinning, which is just electric. That's the same process, just, and my cat can sit on my lap while I do this one. And she kept getting her eyelashes caught because she kept getting too close to the fiber. The last thing that you do before you actually start to knit it is something called plying. And plying is when you put lots of fiber together that you've made. So you make all these pieces on those other tools that we use. You make lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of yards. And then you put anywhere from 2 to 10 singles together to make a stronger or a thicker yarn. This is where you can fix any mistakes you have. And it finishes the prep portion of the sweater. So what it looks like is I was doing a 3-ply. So I had 3 pieces of fiber that I'd made into yarn singles, and then they're coming off of the top of the table, and I'm just holding, I'm not actually spinning them, I'm just letting them spin together on their own. So that's the biggest portion of that, and then you get to make your sweater. So start with your fiber, make your singles, make your plied yarn, and then you can make the sweater. And the sweater here looks like, well, it's the one I have here. I will actually show it since the picture's not showing up. The sweater is this one. So that's what it looks like. And it took me about a month to spin the fiber for this. I think I had around 3,600, so 3,600 yards of singles that I made. And I made around 1,200 yards of plied yarn. And then I knit the sweater from that. It took me about a month to make the spinning, to get through all the spinning, and it took me a couple weeks to make the sweater itself from the yarn. So that's the end of my thing. If anybody has questions, or
Yeah,
that's the biggest portion of stuff.
if anybody has questions, you can either unmute yourself and ask the question out loud, or you can type in your question into the chat and I can read that off. Okay, well, if we don't have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and first thank Dawn for being here. This was super interesting. I definitely want one of those sweaters. They're really beautiful looking. Thank you for being here, and thank you everybody for attending. If you're interested in more events, go to the library, River Valley District Library's website, and go to our calendars, and you can see all of the events that we're planning for March. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, and have a good night.
Thank you.